God damn, now that was an emotional episode and a half. Of course, I'm talking about Solo Leveling Season 2, Episode 9. It is Episode 9, right? I think it is. Let's go with that. Now, without too much prologuing here, let's just jump right into the episode because this was probably, most definitely actually, the most emotional or emotionally impactful episode of the entire series so far. Of course, I am referring to the very emotional scene when Sung finally, after getting the elixir, after beating the boss last episode, actually gets 6 of them. So I assume he can also get Jinho's dad saved soon enough, and then others. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he'll sell the rest of the elixirs. Guess we'll have to see. But yes, he does get his mom woken up. That entire scene, I thought, was very well done, to be honest. It very much felt like they had put a good amount of effort into every single part of that scene. Not only the animation, of course, but the music felt on point, the timing felt on point, and they also gave the scene time to really hit you, you know? They didn't just rush through it, like, okay, mom, wake up, let's have a hug, and be done with it. They really took their time to not rush things, but really show this really raw, emotional scene to its fullest, and really letting you as the viewer revel in it and really get impacted by it. So on that front, I have to say, well done, Solo Leveling. You did that part well. You did find out that the mom was only asleep for 4 years. I thought it was going to be like way longer, like 10 or something. But I guess that's just how long the father was gone for, not how long she has been asleep. Before Sung wakes his mother though, I have to say I also like the beginning of that scene when, before he's even, given the elixir, you can see he is just shaking. Like he's hesitating even. His hands are shaking and he's probably thinking to himself that, shit, like do I even really want to give this to mom, right? Because if this doesn't work, I have nothing. And probably having that sort of fear in the back of his mind of like, yeah, of course I have to give it to her, but what if this doesn't work, you know? And I appreciate them sort of showing that, visually at least, before he, of course, eventually does give the elixir to her and, well, cue the music and the emotional scene. The pure emotion, though, they managed to put into the scene as a whole, I have to say I appreciate, as I said, the tears, the crying, just really having that also, that dialogue, right, between Sung and his mother. His mother saying like, hey, you must have worked so hard. You have all these, scars on you. You look so grown up now. And his mother acknowledging like, yeah, you must have, done you and kept your promise about, protecting Gina and, making sure she grows up and, that she's safe. And just having that very emotional scene between the two of them and them sort of having that reuniting moment was very touching, right? And of course, the tears and the music and everything in the scene just amplifies that to 11. And it really made most people, myself included, emotional, right? You really feel it. Like, you really feel engaged with the scene. Like, yeah, this is emotional. This is something, very deeply impactful to our main character, Sung here, and the mother, of course. And you really feel that. And I really appreciate when the show makes a scene like this, especially in a show like Solo Leveling, where emotion isn't really that common, right? We haven't really had any really emotional scenes before this in the same way, but they still managed to make it as good as it is, says something about the quality of the people behind the show. And from what I heard as well, they added on to the source material to make the scene better than what it was in its original form. And if that is correct, then kudos, applause to you, well done. But yeah, definitely, at least for me personally, at the end of that scene, when his mom says he must have worked so hard, and Sung's voice actor really putting in work there, sort of whimpering out, yeah, I did. And that whole thing, that really got to me. And I was like, oof, really pulling on the heartstrings here, really pulling on that tear duct. Not that I cried, but, you definitely feel that emotion welling up inside you. And you're like, oof, yeah, I'm feeling this, So that entire scene, definitely the highlight of the episode, and definitely something I appreciate the episode for and the show for really having the ability to make it as good as it was. And then after the fact as well, when Gina comes in and has that moment with her mother, then it's like a left-right gut punch, First you have Sung and his mother, and you're like, oof, I feel this. And then Gina after, and her whole crying and emotional scene as well, you get punched on the other side of your stomach, It's like, oh God, okay. You really want me to cry to this episode, don't you? I didn't, but, I can definitely understand why many would just fall into tears, especially if they have had, similar situations happen in their own lives or had, let's say a similar situation with their parents in one form or another. I can definitely see this being very, deeply impactful for them. But this scene, of course, was far from the only thing that happened in episode 9. We had more happen. But again, of course, as I said, to me at least, this was the best scene of this episode by far. Very well done, and one of the most impactful scenes of the season, or the series rather, actually. At least to me. Before I move on though, I will mention that even though the scene, like this specific scene, was very well done, very emotional, very well structured, animated, everything, the setup for this was far from perfect, right? Like, yes, of course, we know that, the reason that Sung has been on this leveling grind and becoming as strong as he is has been because of his mother, but his mother hasn't really been a big focus in the series so far, right? Yes, sure, she's been mentioned time to time, and we've had, like, some general mentions of her and the reason of why he's doing this throughout Season 1 and Season 2, but it hasn't really been a big focus. So while the setup for this scene wasn't the best, the scene itself, yes, was definitely very good. Now we just have to see how they end up having the mother involved in the story moving forward, if much at all. I suppose if nothing else, this does sort of let Sung off the hook for being the provider, being the person that sort of takes care of his sister, and his mom can now take over that role in a large extent, and Sung can probably be more independent to do his hunter thing and whatever else, while his mom takes care of the home and his sister. Potentially. We'll have to see. Anyhow, as I said 10 minutes ago, moving on. After this scene, finally we get the scene with Sung talking to Go, because of course, as we saw last episode, all the S-rank hunters have been called upon to join this new Jeju Island raid. And, Go asks Sung, will you join us? Obviously, having Sung on board will be a massive boon to the party, because Sung is, as we all know, very OP. But then we do see him having a bit of doubt, seemingly. And I did actually appreciate them including this in the episode and in the anime, with him having these thoughts of like, yeah, this would of course be a really good leveling experience for me, right? A lot of strong monsters, I'll get some more levels, I'll get even stronger, but now that he has his mother back and he has his family back in a grander sense, he thinks about that, He doesn't just have this one goal anymore of saving his mother, he's done that. And now that he has his family reunited, he thinks a lot on this, and he thinks about, maybe if I join this thing, I'm risking losing my family. What if I get hurt? What if I die? I don't want to lose my family now that I've just gotten them back. And he probably was going to say no, that he wasn't going to join the expedition. But of course, it gets interrupted by Sung sensing some magic, whatnot, in the distance, and then Go and him going to see this sparring with the S-rank hunters, which inevitably, I assume, of course, will lead to him joining the expedition. But again, I did appreciate them just having this scene of Sung really having to think about his new priorities now, and it not just being about him leveling and becoming stronger, but him wanting to be around his family, protect his family, and potentially, realigning what his priorities will be moving forward. Overall, good scene. Appreciated that one as well. We do also, though, get another scene that I'm a bit more conflicted about, and that is this short scene where once again the anime hints at Sung maybe struggling with some mental problems or whatnot regarding killing, right? Because as Sung says, when he's thinking about his family and whatnot, he has crossed the line, as Sung says. And in that case, of course, he's referring to killing other humans, right? And they have hinted at this before, that Sung, might have some issues with how many he's killed or just having killed in general, right? And how that's affected him. They haven't done anything with that yet. He's not visibly shaken from it or impacted by it yet. But again, they are throwing another sort of hint in there, another little match in there of, maybe we'll do something about this concept of him being affected by the killing he's done, and maybe delving into that subject more in the future. Now, as I said, they haven't really done anything to build this up so far, except a few mentions. And when I say a few, I mean literally 1 or 2 mentions about this prior in the season. And while they might maybe want to try exploring it, I'm not sure if I want them to. And that is for a multitude of reasons. First of all, they haven't really built this thing up, right? They haven't really built up this concept of him struggling with killing or viewing himself as this sort of maybe broken or irredeemable character in a way. And if they're going to start building that up now, I think that's a bit late. They should have put way more seeds in the ground regarding this earlier if they were going to try exploring this further in the future. Second of all, I'm not really confident that they would do a good job of exploring this, because you have to have pretty good writing and good understanding and take a lot of time to properly develop something like this. You know, his mental state, potential issues, PTSD, whatever else you might want to do around it. It takes a lot of skill to properly write that in a good, succinct way that feels organic and is something you can sort of build, let's say, an arc around. And I'm not really sure if they are able to do that, because it's not that kind of show. And that brings me to my last biggest reason of why I don't really want them to go into this too much more. And that is, I just don't think solo leveling is the kind of anime where you want to explore these things. Like, again, this subject can be very complex to try to write a narrative around. And if they want to build onto this and have Sung's character be very involved with, let's say, these themes and potential issues after what he's done, that to me doesn't necessarily fit with solo leveling as an anime. Like, this isn't an anime where you have very deep, complex issues sort of told through a narrative setting or explored through a narrative setting like this, you know? And I just don't think it'll be a good fit for the anime as a whole if they actually try exploring this properly. And if they're not going to explore it properly or in depth as they should, if they are going to explore it, then I would just rather them not do it at all, because any sort of superficial exploration of it isn't going to feel satisfying anyway. So in that regard, yeah, I do kind of hope they just stay away from it. And it's okay if they want to mention it a bit, again, a few times here and there, as they have been so far, but I hope they just let it be very light and they don't try to explore it too much more, because I think it just won't be a good fit for the anime, and I worry if they can actually nail it even if they try. We'll have to see though, moving forward. That being said, before we move on, if you're enjoying the content, getting any value out of it, do please remember to like and subscribe. It greatly helps out the channel, so thank you for supporting. Now, we do also get a good amount of scenes regarding Baek, Min, and of course the Jeju Island raid, the new one and the prior one. Now, when I saw Min, I didn't remember if we saw him in season 1 or not. I guess we did at the very start with the scene of the initial Jeju Island raid. But to me, personally, I was like, oh yeah, Min. I remember him from the solo leveling gacha, because I played the gacha for like 3 months. And Min was my main healer in my fight against the monsters. So I remembered him from that. And yeah, he is an S-rank healer. And apparently, as we find out, he is retired. And he was in Baek's guild before he was retired. And then, of course, we find more about why he retired early. Apparently, he retired early because, well, especially after the Jeju Island fight, you know, he isn't really a fighting guy. He's tired of blood, tired of death, and he just wants to do something different. So, like, okay, understandable. That did, though, also spark a very interesting theory from Baek that, you know, Min is basically the only hunter that he has heard of, and us as viewers have also heard of, that ended up actually retiring from being a hunter and doesn't enjoy it. Because, as Baek says from his theory, you know, maybe a reason why hunters awaken to their powers is largely because the vast majority of them have some sort of inclination towards fighting and battling and enjoying that sort of thing. And that's why they get their powers in the first place. And that's a very interesting theory, and it would make sense, because if just random people, completely random, with no sort of prerequisite set, awoke to be hunters, yeah, you would probably in reality see way more of them actually just retiring or quitting shortly after starting, because you know, battling for your life every day and being in these intense, often life or death situations isn't something just the average Joe could do, even if they had gained new powers. So I do definitely think that Baek's theory here has some merit, that the vast majority of people that do awaken have some sort of inclination towards fitting in that sort of frantic fighting, battling life. But yes, Min says he's retired, and he says he's not going to join Baek on the island again after the last time, especially after they lost their fellow guild member, which I forget the name of, because he died, I suppose, last time, dealing with the ants. So he says he won't go back. But as we see with the flashback scene with Min and the now dead comrade, yeah, I assume that in the end, Min will actually still go, because he probably wants to help Baek out, because as the fellow comrade said in this flashback, yeah, Baek needs us. He's unpredictable, and he needs their help to see things through when things get rough or things go off track. Which I assume also refers to what we learn later, that yes, Baek actually loses control when he goes full beast mode, and he doesn't really differentiate friend from foe, that sort of thing. So okay, I suppose, as I said, we probably might see Min join in the fight after all. Be it to protect, civilians, or just to sort of back up Baek and that sort of bond they have between them from the last time they were on Jeju Island, and just being sort of friends and having that clear sort of bond between them as brothers in arms and whatnot from being in the same guild for a long time before he retired. Now this naturally brings us to the S-rank sparring match, because of course we had to have something like that happen, right? I had an inkling something like this would happen when I was watching the episode, and yes, it did happen, so kudos to me for seeing another development before it happens. I do like the intro scene when this Japanese guild comes in, right, to watch the training, as Sung is also there to watch the sparring. And, first, this one Japanese S-rank says, who's that? Oh yeah, that's, Sung, he's a new S-rank. And then the Japanese guild leader says, yeah, I heard he was an assassin. And then, the assistant, whatever girl, says, no, I heard he was a mage. It's like, yeah, actually, he's kind of everything. So, you're both correct, and you can basically call him a healer and whatever else too, because he can basically do everything if he really wants to. I also do appreciate the very short aura scene when the assistant girl remarks or rebuffs the guild leader, saying, no, he's actually a mage is what I heard, and him just looking up at Sung with his aura just pouring out and commenting, him? A mage? Really? Clearly hinting at him, seeing him for being much more than just that. Well, the aura says it all, I suppose. And we can't go an episode without aura farming, so fair enough. But yes, they also do set up the leader of the Japanese guild there to be uber strong, right? As the secretary girl, whatever her name is, says while looking at, the Korean S-ranks spar, that is this really the standard of S-ranks in this country? And then commenting that, well, after watching you, talking to the Japanese guild leader, fight, watching any other S-rank fight doesn't feel like they're S-ranks at all. So clearly, as I said, they're setting up this guild leader from Japan to be really, really strong. And then immediately when she said that, I thought, okay. I'm just gonna immediately think that Sung and him are gonna have some sort of sparring fight in this locale in the next episode. And while that isn't assured, I do expect that to happen, as it just very narratively fits, with both being, better than the rest. And yes, after some, not taunting, but a comment or two from the Japanese S-ranks, this very jumped up A-rank guild leader comes up, claiming, hey, you're making fun of us, I'll beat you up, even though he doesn't have the power to back that up. And a sparring match does ensue. And we end the episode with, of course, 4 on the Japanese end and 4 on the Korean end, having Cha and Baek and Ma and wherever the 4th guy's named, against these 4 Japanese S-ranks in this mock battle, which we're gonna get next episode. I did also like the quick comment from Go when he comes in and says, yeah, let's have a sparring match, right? But then excluding, mages or non-combat hunters because they're not really good one-to-one. It's not really fair pitching them against like a proper frontline combat hunter. And I suppose that's why Sung also doesn't get involved there. Then again, Sung probably didn't want to get involved anyway, so that's why he wasn't really put up for being part of the 4. But as I said, when this 4-on-4 sparring match ends, yes, I do definitely expect that somehow in some way it's going to end up being Sung versus the Japanese guild leader, and we're going to have a lot of Sugois with all these S-ranks watching around the 2 of them fight and being like, oh my god, they're both so amazing. Wow. At least that's my expectation for the next episode, and that's not a negative thing, because I'm going to love every second of that, to be sure. To get to the last point, though, on my calendar here for this episode, I do want to talk a bit about this Thomas Andre character, first of all. So apparently he's an S-rank, and he's under the American jurisdiction. But apparently he is like basically a whole army in one. He is talked about by Go as being an S-rank with the power to rival an entire nation. So at least to me, it seems like he is being set up to be this new sort of comparison to Sung. Like this Andre character is supposed to be, this insanely powerful S-rank, maybe the most powerful S-rank in the world, with the power of an entire nation, an entire military by himself. So I assume that at some point, he will be sort of a comparison to Sung, either if they fight directly or, they sort of fight side by side, but he will be sort of a new point of comparison, I feel, for Sung and how powerful he is going to be. What exactly he's going to do in the story, though, is still unclear, and the anime makes it very vague as well, so we'll have to see what sort of influence or impact he will have on the main story here, if much at all. But as I said, I expect him to be some sort of point of comparison for Sung sooner or later. To end off though as well, I want to quickly mention that I had a bit of a laugh when, Isil, she's being ignored at the beginning of the episode, and she's just wandering around in the background while Sung is like, trying to make this elixir. She's just trying to speak to him, but he's just, nope, don't know Wold. I'm busy, crafting some stuff here in my, inventory screens. And then Sung uses this new ability to instantly teleport out of the dungeon, so Isil doesn't even get time to make her confession. Poor Isil, dude. She's having a rough time. A rough time. No waifu time for you. Sad times indeed. As a whole, though, episode 9, very enjoyable for, well, mainly the emotional scene. But it, set up some interesting, probable fights for the next episode. But of course, yes, the emotional scene, was the big thing this episode. And it was impactful, it was very emotional, it was very well made. And definitely, drew the episode to be a highlight in the series. Just as much for being good as for being different than the rest. But the rest of the episode as well, very enjoyable. And I did like the things that they do with Sung, as I mentioned before, with him sort of having some second thoughts regarding just going out killing monsters when he has his family back and all of that. Now, I do have a question of what they're going to really do next, because now that Sung has completed his, let's say, big goal, right, which has been his driving motivation from the start of the series, which is, of course, to find a medicine to cure his mother, since becoming part of the system and becoming a player, what is his motivation? What is his drive going to be now? Is it going to be protecting his family? Is it going to be protecting, the country from, outside, monsters, to just generally be like, a hunter to protect them? Is it going to be him maybe trying to find himself, going his own way? What's his now new goal or new main drive going to be? Not quite sure, but I do expect them or hope that they will try to explore, what will Sung's, real motivation now be, now that he has accomplished his goal. Anyhow, we'll have to see how that all turns out. But as I said, I enjoyed the episode. What did you think? Did you like it, hate it? Leave all those thoughts down below. And of course, any thoughts on my commentary or analysis of this episode. With that being said, do please remember to like and subscribe as well if you do enjoy the video here. And also, if you want to be extra supportive, check out the Patreon in the description down below. Would deeply appreciate any and all support you choose to give. With that being said, I hope you have a good day. As always, keep watching anime, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.